Live. Johnny already tweeted that he's ready to engage with distractions.
Oh, great. Thanks, Johnny.
I love it. It makes me happy.
Right at 8:45 too. That's impressive.
Yeah, like right on time.
Well, oh yeah. Wait, wasn't on time 8:30, or is that just what you guys told me? So I'd actually be ready at 8:45.
No, it's 8:45 is what we planned.
Oh well. Okay. I thought I was 15 minutes late. So
Nope.
you've figured out what Sarah figured out a long time ago, which is tell me a different time.
I love it.
Close the door.
We can start doing that though. I think my cover band started doing that to me at some point. Then they stopped when I showed up all the time on time.
Nice.
I've gotten better. Shoot, so I'm not able to. Let's see what happens if I do it on my phone. Might have to do the chat on my phone. Looks like it'll work. It's working.
Okay, I'll bring it up on my phone too.
Yeah, Brian Simpson's on. Okay, this is gonna be fun. I'll have to not watch it too much. Yeah, if you guys can bring it up on your phones and just make sure your sound is muted for the broadcast, should be good. It's working.
I'll leave it to you guys. I'm not gonna check.
Yeah, it's risky. I'll lose my focus.
I mean, I know it's gonna be half of Brian Simpson just talking about Baker.
Correcting us? That's what I feel like.
I'm gonna be feeling so self-conscious during this.
Pressure.
Okay, I'm gonna start recording and we're good. Welcome everyone to Flyover Footy. We got a new show for you tonight that is the full team. We've got the entire starting five. Is this is like a full indoor soccer team? At least we need a goalie, I guess. We don't have a goalie, but everyone's here. Let's run it down. Who's here before we get started? Santiago, you were the first to log in tonight. I heard it's a balmy 80 degrees down in Puerto Rico right now.
Yeah, I know. Still enjoying Puerto Rico. Have a couple more weeks. And by the way, I played some goalie in high school, so I could be the goalie.
Oh, perfect. So we need one outfield player to add, or we just play a man down the whole time. You guys ready to run for an hour straight?
Sure.
That's all I do. When you don't have too much skill, you have to run to make up for it.
What happens when you're 38 and you have neither? That's me. Okay, Matt, that's the voice of Matt Baker talking. Matt, did you play soccer on a high level at all? I didn't.
No, I definitely did not. I came into soccer like late in life. I was a late bloomer as far as my love for soccer because I didn't have a team like a youth high school team growing up. My school didn't have soccer. So I grew into the love thanks to one Thierry Henry primarily in FIFA, I want to say 01.
Yeah.
Nice quick backstory for me.
Similar for me as well. Jake, how's it going, man? You're here tonight. Last week was a tough one for you, right?
I mean, the fact that I didn't make it and I just had to watch and listen later.
You were busy. Like, I could tell you were busy. You were like trying to keep up with Twitter, and work, I think, was pretty rough for you. And like, you didn't even know we were having a show till it was like about to happen. I don't mean that.
You guys are like, we're going. I was like, there's no way I can make it.
I'm glad you're here this week, man. Thanks for making it.
Yeah. Also, my dog will be probably barging in at some point, so that's our other outfield player. Margot will be running around.
Perfect.
There you go.
This is ideal. Yeah, this is perfect. Stuart's here, and we can see him. What's up, Stu?
Yeah, my laptop camera decided to work after being broken for 14 months. I did hot swap out the laptop battery, so maybe that was something that the settings were messed up on that. I don't know. But yeah, you guys unfortunately have to see me, and thanks to Johnny Garcia for bullying me into making sure I had a camera. So
I was gonna say I'm glad to have you on, and if we post any clips, it won't be like a pulsating Fulham logo.
No more free advertisement for Fulham.
That's right.
So you can follow me at Fulham STL.
There you go.
I like it. All right. So not a ton has happened this week. Like last time we streamed, it was just like perfect because what was announced? Carnell was announced, and then we streamed that night. So that was awesome. This time we have a little more time to dig into all the other stuff. We're going to start with MLS Next Pro roster rules. I think we, of course, need to start with Matt on this one, and you can get us rolling with some of the rules, and maybe we'll circle back around to you to really make sure we cleaned everything up.
I'll just go through a few, and if you guys are like, this sounds idiotic, feel free to jump in. Although, credit to the roster rules, it makes a lot more sense, and it's almost like sneaky making sense compared to what MLS actually is. It's like almost too good to be true type of thing. So I'm curious what you guys think. So the article Jeff Ruder came out with had a lot of details. First thing was just self-explanatory. 20 MLS teams plus Rochester is going to start off the league. The biggest thing that I think he broke with was there's no salary cap in this league. So MLS has a strict salary cap with a lot of mechanisms to get around that strict salary cap, but there's no salary cap in this league, which is really interesting. Along with that, there's no minimum or maximum salaries, which that's kind of where I want to get your guys' opinions on in a minute on how that. What do you think? Good news / bad news. But the other big thing with that is in MLS, contracts are with the league, and you're basically licensed to the team, or the team operates your contract. In MLS Next Pro, every player's contract will be with the team itself, akin to like what USL is doing. So that in and of itself, kind of all those put together, makes a lot more flexibility and just interesting ways that teams can build their rosters. They don't have to be similar at all to each other, but just the sheer concept, though, remembering that MLS Next Pro is almost a child team to MLS, I can't really see too much variation in that. And if and when we do, I will be interested to see if it's the big spenders in MLS that actually try to go outside the box for using these different things. Along with that, players can't be traded like they are in MLS. So in MLS, you have GAM you're using to trade players. Paul Ariel is a great example recently where he's been rumored to go to other teams in MLS. Right now, Charlotte rumored to give him $2 million in GAM. But you can't do that in MLS Next Pro because GAM doesn't exist. So those mechanisms, GAM, TAM, DPs, none of that exists in MLS Next Pro. So you're talking contracts with teams, you're talking cash transfer fees, you're talking negotiations by players to other teams if you're going to move within the league. I don't personally think we're going to see a whole lot of that right off the bat, but as the league develops, it'll be interesting to see what that looks like. Those are kind of, each team gets 7 international slots. Those are kind of like the ground floor type things. There's a lot as far as like what the rosters make up, but with those things, I'm interested in what you guys think of that right there. Like the no salary cap, no minimum, maximum salaries. Every contract is with the team. No mechanisms like MLS, 7 international slots. It really seems to me like they're putting their money where their mouth is and using this league as a test site for all of the different things they could theoretically do in the future. So if you think about it, a lot of this stuff is what we want MLS to adopt. The freedom to do all this stuff. No salary cap, no maximum, no minimum. Just let people spend their money however they want to build the best team they want.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, I took it as a lot of it is lifted off of USL. So if they want to compete with a Division 3, Division 2, they have to kind of take some of the USL rules. But the cynical part of me looks at the no minimum salary and instantly thinks of how many owners were there recently who reported that they wanted to get rid of their academies altogether? There were several. So we know there are some MLS owners that really don't want to spend money. So are we going to see a lot of college guys or recent college graduates who are basically making USL 1.0 salaries for the summer. I mean, the no minimum is what worries me. I don't see that as any way you can spin that positively necessarily, especially when you have USL with a you know with a players association. I mean, that part of the roster rules I really doesn't sit great with me, but I like the no maximum. I mean, if they want to go out and spend big, I like that.
With the no minimum, you're kind of hoping that everybody's on their best behavior and not underpaying anybody, and that's a lot of trust to put into people who haven't really shown that they're looking out for anything other than their bottom line.
I assume the worst because that's the kind of person I am. Do you guys worry about the other kind of bad that I think Stu kind of mentioned it there, that you put an MLS player on an MLS Next Pro team when you pay him as much as you want and then you loan him up? That's one rule I'm not sure. Is that what you're getting to later, Matt? Am I jumping the gun?
A little bit, but that's one of the unknowns, that kind of example. But the other thing Stu is getting to is loading up players fresh out of college. So there are requirements to rosters that were announced too. So each team will have 24 roster slots for people who are getting paid. So your contract, so they have to have at least 12 contracted players will be carried. I don't know where that other 12 is coming from, but professional type players. So the 24 people on the roster, whether it's people we signed as homegrowns or new signees from other teams, there's a 24-man roster limit. However, there's an additional 11 slots on that roster that can be occupied by amateur players. So, and from those 11, there's a requirement for on the field as well, which is really interesting. You can only have at most 5 amateurs on the field at the same time. So you can have 11 amateurs on your roster, only 5 on the field at the same time. My thought is I could see City 2 in particular signing a handful, 5 to 10 of their U17s from last year to actual contracts. So they're now professional soccer players playing in this league on this team. But they could at any point in time, they've got 11 amateurs, so existing 16s and 17s, they could call up, they could put on the roster, they could have them dress, they could have them play. And that's how you get those 5 at maximum, is existing academy players who retain their amateur status.
Playing on the field at one time. That's what you said? Okay.
Yeah, you could have a team comprised of we could start us off with 5 of our current U16, U17 players, and then 6 players who are under contract. That could be a start. That could be a lineup.
Matt, and there is only a maximum. There is no minimum, right?
Correct. Yeah, you could go with 0 amateurs or academy if you choose to.
Which is interesting because I half expected this to be a glorified U19 team, and it sounds like, with these rules, it's not at all that. It's so interesting to me that they do seem, with the rules that you mentioned, that I think Smitty even said in the chat that it's very USL Championship-like, and it is.
It seems that way.
There's not many rules, and it does seem to be more like a pro league rather than a glorified U19 team, which I don't even know which I would prefer as an MLS city now. Like, it's very weird to be in with an MLS team. Like, I'd almost wish we could put 11 academy players out there. I don't know what you guys think of that. Santiago, Jake, any thoughts?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think having the balance between academy and also professional is good. As you said, if you don't have a limit, you could have an starting 11 with a bunch of academy players, and even though that would be great to give minutes to all those players, I think the league also needs to have other players, professional players and players with more experience will give it also higher level. So it'll be interesting to see how every team handles that mix between professionals and academy players.
It's been mentioned on other podcasts, but maybe they want no salary cap because they want one of their teams to go really far in the Open Cup this year. I mean, we could get some ringers and throw them on the field. We can bring Tommy Heineman back for the last few minutes of every single game, and it's legal. We can do it. So that's kind of cool. I love that we're going to be in the Open Cup. Stu, I know you love that too.
Yeah, that was amazing news when I heard that.
We get to get those banners back out this year.
We do have banners. We have the old ones, and we have something special that we were saving for last year, and obviously the pandemic or 20. Gosh, pandemic's been going on 2 years.
I know.
It's just a thing that exists now.
That face he just made. That's how we all feel. Jake, what are you thinking about like roster makeup? What you'd like to see with your team with this third division side, MLS Next Pro?
Yeah, well, I had a couple questions. I guess there is an age limit. Is there an age limit for this team for the?
Nope.
No.
So there's a limit on how many you can have, right? Is that right, Matt?
Was it a certain number over like 24? Or am I making that up?
Right.
They're over 20. I want to say. So the age limit
rules. Yeah.
The age limit is based on something that that Phil's not gonna like, and it's based on discovery rights.
Oh.
So I never read anything about an age limit on players you could sign or anything like that. The age limit relates to players that a team can claim discovery rights on from an MLS perspective to MLS Next Pro, because the contracts are with MLS Next Pro, and so if you sign somebody directly to MLS Next Pro contract, an MLS team can claim discovery rights on that player if they're not homegrown or through the super draft.
Let's put a pin in that.
Yeah.
Just for a second. I'm so sorry, Matt, because Jake, you sounded like you were getting at something, like as far as the age limit and stuff.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm trying to figure out. I was going to ask too, like the limitations between if jumping up and down, like from first team and second team, if you call it that, between MLS and MLS Next Pro. Because if I'm looking at no salary cap, like what's to stop a team from going like spending a ton of money, even if we spend a ton of money this year and then next year we throw them on MLS. But if you spend I don't know what the benefit to that is, but if you say you just spend a ton of money and not worry about your DPs or GAM or anything and put them on your MLS Next Pro on a contract that's unlimited, essentially, what's to stop you from letting that player jump up to MLS while on a
they still
MLS
have to
Next
be
Pro?
Compliant with MLS.
Yeah.
When they move from MLS Next Pro, when they move up to MLS, that contract has to be compliant with MLS roster rules.
Yeah,
So,
and you can use those things that exist in MLS that don't exist in MLS Next Pro can come into play. Like you can start buying players down with GAM, or they can be part of your under 22 initiative signings or a young DP. But the one thing that hasn't really been clarified is if you sign a player in MLS, what's the process to go down to MLS Next Pro? Is it because the contract's, again, not with the leagues, with the team, so is it a loan process where you just loan it from, it's MLS loaning to City 2 directly. Is that any different in theory from what we usually see with loans to USL Championship clubs? It doesn't really seem like it would be that much different. There might be some behind the scenes that are like you do funny money, you do things differently, but just practically, it just seems like it would be a loan in that way. I'm interested to see, Jake, the first player who actually goes from an MLS Next Pro contract to MLS, what kind of hoops they have to jump through, or whether it will be as straightforward as any other player that you might want from an international player or a USL Championship player that you sign, and you just make it work with whatever salary cap space you have.
Yeah, and what I've been discovering, if I were to guess like how it will go, is it's really nice that this MLS Next Pro is so open, and it as a separate entity is great, right? But anytime you could do almost anything you want with that little team over there, but anytime you move anyone to an MLS contract, there's a whole bunch of other things that like other hoops you got to jump through. So like everything's fine in USL, everything's fine MLS Next Pro. You can do mostly whatever you want, but if you want to move them up to MLS, that's where you got to have your ducks in a row and prepared, like homegrown rights, homegrown territories, discovery rights. And so, we shouldn't go into that today, but it is something we should be thinking about. I will be like waking up in the middle of the night wondering who is legal and who isn't. But
there are some ways though that you just automatically have their rights. And I think City 2, it's going to be important to remember those. Like if we sign a player to a homegrown contract, that's automatically ours for MLS.
Yeah.
Whoever we pick in the super draft next year and they play for our MLS Next Pro, they're automatically ours. Like that, those are the two protections that you have on players.
So Matt, I cut you off earlier. Were you able to finish that thought? And is there more that we should talk about here before we move on?
For the roster rules in general?
Yes.
The
crazier ones.
The discovery right ones.
Yeah, the discovery right one sounds interesting.
So here's the example that's from the article, and I'll just read it verbatim because it's a really good example. So this is about claiming rights on players where MLS Next Pro contract to sign, let's say you sign Sporting Kansas City to sign a player. St. Louis City, their MLS team could put a claim on that player if it's not a homegrown or a super draft pick. And the example is, let's just say in the event that St. Louis City wants to sign an unprotected player from Sporting's MLS Next Pro roster, the two sides are going to have to come to an agreement to acquire the player's rights. City would need to put that player on their discovery list to have the exclusive negotiating rights for that player. From there, City and Sporting would negotiate a transfer or a loan agreement to settle their business before City could negotiate terms with the player for a contract. So if a player in MLS Next Pro, it boils down to if a player is not homegrown or super draft pick, they can be claimed by any team as discovery rights. So if Sporting then wanted to bring that player up and they were on the discovery list with City, probably going to have to pay City some money. The problem that introduces is that example right there, where if you have, let's just say Cincinnati. Cincinnati says, I'm placing discovery rights on all these random people who aren't homegrown or super draft just because the mechanism exists and I can place discovery rights on them. And all of a sudden City wants to bring a guy up or trade for a guy, but just randomly Cincinnati has their discovery rights. Well, now City has to pay Cincinnati for those discovery rights. That's the oddball way that I figured, Phil, you'd have a problem with, because you're going to probably have teams who just put discovery rights. I mean, they might have a scouting network and they might do some legitimate legwork, but you also might have some teams who just pick a name out of a hat and put discovery rights on because they can, and there's no reason to stop them.
Yeah, and without going into too many details, I think I've already been acclimated, or I don't remember the word, like Americanized or MLSized, but I'm already like getting used to it because it's like I kind of view that as the world we live in, and I've been able to like think of, in most ways this usually works out, and there's a problem sometimes where MLS, like I always think of it as like there's always a trump card, and you just got to figure out what the trump card is and who has the upper hand in what situation. And unfortunately, like guys like Lutz and now Carnell, who hopefully has enough experience in MLS that, you know, he's used to being ready for this kind of thing, is knowing who owns the trump card, whether you can wriggle around the rules with MLS, if not, in order to make sure that whoever you're investing in is actually yours. And that's the scary part. And then often, like kind of like what you said, Matt, here, like even if we want to bring someone up through MLS Next Pro, he's been on our team for a year, maybe 2, maybe 3 years, but we don't have his discovery rights for MLS, and we want to bring him up. This other team has the trump card if it's on that discovery list. And so like they can, the weird thing might be like someday someone's like, no, you can't have him. And then what happens? That's the scary thing that I like wake up in the middle of the night thinking, if you guys remember Christian Cabas, like this is that situation, right? But with homegrown territories. And we won't go into that. You know, I think another day we'll probably be talking pretty heavily about that, but those are the worries. But I think I like to think of it as a trump card situation because it's kind of easy to, you know, not have to think too hard about the rule itself, but just know that someone else could trump you at any moment.
To me, the most interesting thing right now is I'm trying to think why should we care about most of this stuff right now? We don't have an MLS club for another year and a couple months. So what is the thing for us to pay attention to right now for all of this stuff? And aside from the super nerdy stuff of how much people are making and whether players are, to Stu's point, being treated like dirt or if they're being given the keys to the kingdom, I think it's interesting to see that teams get 7 international roster slots for here. So we could be using those. We might have already used those. We might be signing some players from South America, from Germany. Carnell's mentioned some of the places that he wants to scout from and knows that there's talent. So we could be scouting those places and bringing those in now this year. And we could also be signing. We will be signing. I don't think it's a stretch that we will be signing some of our U17s to pro contracts. So how many are we going to sign? Who are we going to sign? Is it the handful or so that we've talked about before? And then taking into consideration that we're going to have those that remain on the U17s, plus probably some U16s, get some time with this team at some point or another. And what is that going to look like from a competition perspective, and what are we going to prioritize? Because this whole thing is a balancing act, right? It's all balancing development of players with competition. You're not straight competing like USL Championship clubs. You're not straight developing like MLS Next. They're trying to have the best of both worlds with all these rules and with the teams. I mean, at the same time, you're trying to draw in independent teams to this league, so you want to give them that competition aspect. And so I think that's why we're seeing a lot of these rules set up the way they are so different from MLS. You're trying to draw in the independent teams. So I want to see how much we prioritize just winning almost at all costs versus developing the academy players, getting them time, and if that ever becomes skewed one way or another for us.
Yeah.
So
And I like to think about the lottery picks, and I think about Atlanta United holding like Sosa or some, South American player on Atlanta United too, because they didn't have roster space for a bit, and being able, I'm good with let's manipulate these rules however we need. Sorry, Santi, what were you gonna say?
no, to echo what Matt was saying, I don't think St. Louis City SC will prioritize winning the first year, because basically 2022 will be like a laboratory for 2023. They'll be able to look to test different formation, different players. So I don't think the priority, at least for 2022, will be winning. Will be more to get into 2023 and getting some of the players that they would like to move up to the main team.
Yeah, I like that. Any more thoughts on MLS Next Pro? And this is just the beginning. We'll be talking a lot more about it. So, and there will be much more to bring up from time to time, I'm sure. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, Jamie Vardy moves from owner to owner, striker, comes in, wins the league.
What if he plays in the Open Cup? I think they can play in it.
They can, yeah.
Yeah, they're eligible. I mean, when does his season? So his season will end in May. That would
They'd have to make it to.
They'd have to win a couple rounds.
Yeah.
They'd have to beat at least one
Okay.
MLS team. I'll check that up as pretty unlikely, but
I did like
possible.
on every single announcement with anything MLS Next Pro, there was always like an asterisk or like in parentheses under Rochester, it was like owned by Premier League Leicester City's Jamie Vardy. It's like, yeah, we know.
Hey,
Get it.
I wonder if his ownership stake was literally like $1, and they're like, the rest is just we can
We
use
just want your likeness. Yeah.
yeah, on everything. Like, oh, man, whatever.
It's an NIL
Cost me
deal.
nothing. Well, I mean, Demba Ba, that's basically what they did with him in 1904 in San Diego. So,
hey, I mean, who got the better deal? It still might be Rochester Rhinos.
I wouldn't be surprised if Vardy played in the U.S. Open Cup unless the Charlotte FC was their opponent at home. I don't see him playing on turf.
Yeah, well, who knows what else he'd be playing on in the Open Cup anyway. Some of that grass may be just terrible.
Some of those Des Moines fields.
gosh.
Yeah, exactly. Let's move on, though. We haven't had a show since John Hackworth was announced as the interim MLS Next Pro coach until the academy season is over. And so that's a cool announcement. I shouldn't say more. Santiago, why don't you start us off on this one?
Yeah, no, I think it's great. He has great experience with the U.S. national team, experience with Louisville, which is one of the top teams in the USL. And I think it will be great for the development of the young players, and also for any players the team is thinking about bringing this season and possibly bringing up next year. So I think it'll be great to have him at least for the first few months as the interim coach. It will also motivate the players to be playing for such a successful coach and learning from him and getting coaching. So I think it'll be great for the team, for the players, and it will help us for 2023.
Anyone else want to jump in?
I thought he was way overqualified
Yeah.
when we were talking about this last year and MLS Next Pro was first announced, and we were thinking, all right, who are we going to bring in? And it was at the same time the rumors of him coming. We were thinking, all right, what's his position going to be? And I thought for sure there's no chance he's going to coach our City 2 team because he's just way overqualified. So I'm happy to see it. Like what Santi obviously, he's an incredible resume, incredibly decorated coach, and he has all the history in the world. That's why he's the perfect director of coaching. He brings all of that to the entire organization. As an interim coach, I'm fine with it. I mean, I would want his talents to be put to better use almost, if that makes sense, which they are long term. But in the gap between Andreas Schumacher coming and or moving up rather, I think it's a fine transition. And if you're not going to have anybody step into that role immediately and let Schumacher graduate, so to speak, it just makes all the sense in the world to have that eye within the organization.
This trajectory that Hackworth's on, MLS to youth national team to USL championship, now MLS Next Pro. The dude's just going downhill, guys. Like, no, like obviously we know why he's here, and these kids are going to be so lucky to have him as a coach for a while. The guy knows what he's doing, proved it with Louisville. So yeah, super lucky. Any other thoughts on him before we move on?
I got some more questions. This is just me asking all the questions and trying to figure stuff out. And I didn't watch live last time, but I did listen to the podcast. So if I missed it and you guys talked about it, I apologize. You're going to have to talk about it again. But I guess that role exactly, director of coaching, and how does that tie in or work with in tandem or side by side? Like how does that work with Carnell? Do you guys know or have an idea what that role is?
My understanding is that, I mean, it's coaching the coaches. He's developing almost the curriculum, the guiding principles, the culture, setting the foundation by which all of our coaches live and breathe day in, day out. He's making sure that all of the coaches are aligned as well, so that whatever's going on with Bradley Carnell aligns with Andreas Schumacher at City 2, with what the kids are learning at the academy. So when Lutz talks about making sure that everybody in the organization is learning the same system, on the same page from the 14s on up, that's Hackworth's job, is with the coaches, making sure the coaches are implementing that vision in a standard manner across the organization. Sounds
right to me. Again, lucky to have him. And I'm with you, Matt. I think you were the one that said that, I hope he does the other stuff too. I know that's why he's there, right? So that's the stuff. We may never know exactly what he's doing, but the fact that he's on board, it makes me feel better about some of the players we might bring in. Actually, if the Josh Tiaro rumors are true, of course there might be a connection there. We talked about the San Diego Loyal possibility because the son's there, and he's probably watched a lot of minutes of that team and probably seen a lot of Josh Yarrow in his life. So, it'd be silly to not at least speculate about that and maybe ask him someday if we get the chance. But it's a perfect example of going back to the MLS Next Pro, like how's our roster going to be constructed? Well, there's an example where we got a guy, or rumored from Stephen Goff, rumored to have Josh Yarrow from San Diego Loyal, defender, who I believe USL second team defender last year. So he's got accolades. But anyway, from the Loyal where Hackworth's son plays, so there's a direct, almost personal connection as one way that we're seeming to craft this roster. So Hackworth and that connection, and wonder what Lutz's connections might have. Or it's an interesting thought.
Yeah, I haven't looked it up, but did Yarrow play for Hackworth with the U17s? Because he age-wise would have lined up pretty closely with that. Whereas Yarrow only represented Ghana.
Yeah, I don't think I think he has a green card, I'm sure, but I don't think he has American citizenship per se. So, yeah, I think he's still getting
his Wikipedia is officially changed now. Unofficially changed. It now has City too as his
God
team on
bless Wikipedia.
So it is
So
official
let's see how
now.
long that lasts. He's
It's official.
number 14 for St. Louis City SC2. So
Well,
let me
which one of you
see.
changed that?
It was probably the same person who changed the Bradley Carnell
Wait,
Wikipedia.
if he already has a number, then how do we find out what other numbered St. Louis City players are listed on Wikipedia?
I know. We've gotten in. Someone is filling in information, and
I mean, I'm good at refreshing a Loose City page to find our schedule, but I'm not good at like backdooring Wikipedia for keywords across the whole site.
I mean,
So
we can repeat Goff rumors, but I don't know if we can repeat the rest. That's true.
Yeah, so Wikipedia at least says he got his green card in 2017.
So he's not an international roster slot. Still have 7.
Yeah.
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
I was actually kind of surprised it was that late because he's been in the U.S. for a long time, since 2009. So, yeah, no, that's I'm just impressed by all this stuff. But no, there's no Hackworth overlap with. I thought there might be something with the U17s.
And Mitch brought up in This Is Silly today or yesterday. I don't know. I listened to it today that he thought that Hack might have been at the Union when he was drafted, which is a really good thought. I hadn't considered it, but they weren't. Both
yeah, Hackworth left Union in 2012, 2013, something like that.
Yeah.
He was back there a while ago. But they also announced in the same announcement of Hackworth that our friend Bomi Park is the player relations manager of MLS Next Pro. So
He's great.
Bomi's awesome. She's someone everyone in St. Louis should know. She's just fantastic. She's part of the St. Louis Mosaic Project. And she does a lot of stuff for like helping immigrants settle and get accustomed to St. Louis. So she is just one of the awesome people in St. Louis, and I couldn't let this go by without throwing some accolades her way, because she's just someone I've gotten to know in the last year and a half who's just so incredible.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Stu. I'm excited to meet her someday. I'm reading the chat. I'm getting distracted. It worked. Okay.
Read the chat then if there's anything funny. I thought Smitty was bashing on Cincy, so I'm all for that.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
There were some other people too who were announced as for the Next Pro staff. Alex Langer is the director of goalkeeping, which is interesting. And Stu, we were talking about this earlier. Seems like Langer, director of goalkeeping with the MLS Next Pro side. Tim Kelly seems like he's still working with the academy, best to our knowledge.
Yeah, no, TK is still there. Yeah.
No, I know he's still there, but I mean, like, his scope of responsibility is still with the academy. So, like, all these are Next Pro kind of announcements. And then I just found that interesting. Tyler Harris, athletic trainer. Brendan Gittemeyer, equipment manager, who interned at St. Louis FC. I didn't know the guy, but that's pretty cool that there was a equipment manager for Next Pro who was an intern for St. Louis FC before going off to the national team.
Yeah.
Yeah, was Brendan the one who replaced gosh, how am I blanking on this? Inter Miami Kitman. He was St. Louis FC's Kitman forever. Can't believe I'm blanking on
I
this.
know the name. I'm going to feel so bad.
Cool first name. I forgot what it was.
He's way beyond us right now, so I know he's not
The
gonna
worst.
pay attention.
Gosh.
Anyways,
Aaron Vega.
Aaron
Yes.
Vega, yeah. Did Brendan replace Aaron Vega?
Vega didn't leave that long ago, did he? This would have had to have been before that, I thought. Because
Yeah.
Brendan was with the national team for, I would assume, a year or two.
Okay,
Yeah,
Brendan looks
I don't-
familiar though. I'm looking at his picture right now with the national team. Definitely recognize him. Man.
Vega left the season before the last season to go to Inter, right? Miami.
Yeah, to start with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, for Inter's first year.
So another one, Matt. I see you're wearing a City jersey, and
Totally officially licensed, by the way.
it is or unofficially.
Oh, it's definitely a do-it-yourself project.
Okay, I thought so,
No?
but I didn't want to
Okay.
say so.
An Adidas a templated jersey plus a City patch
Perfect.
plus some sewing equipment.
Looks
So
great.
a templated jersey.
A templated jersey, yeah, exactly.
That works pretty well.
I went full MLS.
That thing's gonna be worth some money someday. But no, there's been a rumored announcement. I thought this is just for fun, everyone. There's nothing for real that we're about to talk about in the next 5, 10, whatever minutes. But there's an announcement coming. Some people thought it would be stadium naming rights. Some people thought it would be jersey drop based on Cornell and the Cardinals thing that was happening. Let's just talk about it for a bit. Jake, I'm sure you've been following this saga. You have any thoughts about what you might think it might be? Oh, Jake, are you muted?
I'm good. Sorry,
There we go.
I put mute on my end. What I was saying, first of all, I'm just mad because I thought we had this thing going where City makes an announcement the day we're doing an episode and we're going live.
Yeah. What's going on?
I think they knew, they like just messed with us. They're like, oh, we should hold it off until like at least Thursday, until after they record.
They're watching.
So I don't think it's jersey, even though I did have that thought when the specific wording in the tweet from the Cardinals made it seem like it was going to be a jersey, but I think we're way too far out for that. Although I am considering I've been thinking about what they're going to do with the City 2 jersey. I think we talked about it in the group chat a while back too, because I might have made some mock-ups and then sent them in the group chat that won't be distributed on the internet. But yeah, I have no idea. Other than I'm just mad because I thought we were cool with City.
Yeah.
They're messing with us.
Yeah, I thought we had an agreement, an unspoken agreement that they announce things and then we have a show, you know.
Gotta start getting things in writing.
I gave them, this morning I said, hey, we're going to live stream tonight. And I thought that was enough of a wink, wink, wink to get the information we needed, but apparently not.
The other thought is maybe like a schedule or preseason announcement or something.
Yeah, that'd be cool too.
All that stuff is trickling out.
We tried today actually on that one. We tried, everyone.
Made the effort. Instead, we're sitting here spending afternoons tracking down other teams' websites and social medias and piecing together a preseason schedule.
Yeah, and let's talk about that because luckily in private, I very much overreacted today. And, let's just talk about it because we were tracking down what games we're going to have in preseason, what games we're not going to have. And Lou City was announced for, March 5th? Is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
It's a Saturday in St. Louis. And we all got so excited. We're like, oh my gosh, we're playing Lou City. # Kings Cup. Like, this is happening. We're so excited. And then something else happened, and we were like, closed game? What? And
their website listed us and the college they're playing with asterisks that said these will be closed door sessions.
I lost my damn mind.
And crew.
And crew.
Yeah.
Stu put a very controlled tweet out there. So well done, sir. You did good.
Very measured.
So I'm just going to say I'm sure that making it public was well in the works before anyone said anything. I don't think those things happen on a dime. But we know three preseason games right now. And I think I know a fourth. That I was saying in the chat. We'll see if that happens or gets announced. But Matt, you were the one who talked about the first two. If you want to.
Well, so the first one was so we're learning these from other teams that are announcing that they're playing City, which is kind of an interesting tactic for our club to take. But we're talking about it, so here it is. FC Cincinnati is one of the MLS clubs going to Clearwater, Florida, here in like 3 or 4 weeks to do some preseason. And MLS clubs go down there to that complex every year, I believe, at least for the past few, just to do like some multiple teams play each other. So it seems like we're going down there. We're listed on FCC's website as while they're in Clearwater playing us. To me, that tells me we're probably not going down there just to play one match and then fly back. I would assume that we're going to play one or two. And they're probably going to be closed door sessions, but it's just nice to know that some of the other clubs that are going to be down there. I know Nashville's going to be down there. Philadelphia Union are going to be down there. So it'll be interesting to see if one of those gets announced as a closed door match around the February 11th timeframe, which is when we play Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
so-
the other one that we know about too.
Oh, I was gonna say I'm pretty sure February 15th is a good chance that we're playing Philadelphia Union because they have a gap between the 11th. They play the 8th, 11th, and 18th. So there's a gap right in the 15th, and Cincy and Nashville play each other on the 15th. So Union will be in Clearwater, Florida on the 15th with no match. So that is the logical time that we would play the 14th or 15th in that range. So I think we'll see Union announce that they're playing St. Louis City too on
Checks
February
out.
15th. That's my guess. But yeah, the first one was FC Cincy on the 11th, and then Stu Durango yesterday tweeted out that SLU will be playing City. To be determined location, assuming Herman,
Yeah.
and to be announced date. So
Is that one that might be closed? Or no? We're not sure. No
I
data
could
yet
see
on
that
that
as
one.
either way, to be honest.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Well, we don't know when SLU's season starts yet, do we? That schedule hasn't been announced yet either, right?
No.
no,
they
but
were-
it usually starts with a few friendlies early February.
Mhm.
But everything
So
got thrown off because of COVID, because they only started doing the spring season in 2019 or was it 2020? And I guess I don't know.
2020 they were doing it, but I don't remember about 2019.
Yeah, so I think they'll do a few friendlies before they kick off like the A10 spring season.
So you're thinking we may have the SLU game maybe before February 11th. If we're going to make that Clearwater trip.
I was thinking that, but now I think it might fit the week before Louisville, especially if we're going to be home for Louisville, do a St. Louis game. And MLS next season kicks off in March 12th, I believe, is the first weekend of their spring season. So it kind of all dovetails if you want to get a bunch of U17, U16 guys to play in that March 5th game. You get them warmed up and ready for the MLS next season on the 11th or 12th, because both the U16s and the U17s play on the 12th, I believe. If Brian Simpson's calendar is correct, which it basically always is.
Yeah. And it's a home game for City on the 12th.
Yeah, against Chicago Sockers. So I'm sure that's accurate.
You gotta subscribe to that calendar, by the way, STL Soccer Tracker. I think that's Did I get the name right? Yeah, you gotta follow them and you gotta get that calendar. It's awesome. They do amazing work. One question really fast, and then we're gonna finish up with the super draft, and we can't take too long. But Smitty asked a question: where would you guys like to see City 2 play their home games this season? I'm gonna say Herman, because that's the best field and stadium in St. Louis until the other one's done, right? So that's me.
I would love Soccer Park too, but Herman, just on a personal level, it's 5-6 minutes from my house. So I mean, I can't beat that. Yeah, it's Herman for me, then Soccer Park, then Creve Coeur, then Ralph Court Stadium.
I don't know what that is.
Where do you think the game against Louisville will be played at?
I would say that one should be played at Soccer Park, but I think it's going to be played at Herman.
I think I agree. From what I want, I would love Herman, Soccer Park, Creve Coeur. But what I think will happen is like the odds on. I would say the odds on favorites Creve Coeur, dark horse is Soccer Park, and Herman is in no-fly zone.
Yeah, they're preseason games, so I mean, especially Lou City makes sense to do it at Creve Coeur. I guess there's 500 people stands, and attendance really won't hit more than 500. So yeah, Creve Coeur would make sense for that one.
And there's standing room, if it gets up.
Yeah, there's plenty of standing room. They have the weird beer cart thing that they roll around.
I mean, let's be honest. As long as there's beer there, I'm going to be happy. I mean, I'll throw some in my backpack if I have to. I don't mind doing that either. But, atmosphere is better if you stand in line and say hello to a bunch of guys waiting for your beer. I like it. It's part of the game day experience, right? Let's move on, though. Let's do the super draft. I'm going to talk as little as possible because me and Devin Kerr did a long episode about that kind of thing. Very, very in-depth. So listen to that if you're into the nerdy kind of stuff. But maybe we can touch lightly about the super draft picks. I'm going to pull up my order here. I don't have the draft numbers. You guys can fill them if you like in. But in order of St. Louisans to be picked was Isaiah Parker to FC Dallas from SLU, Kip Keller to Austin FC, SLU Scott Gallagher, Patrick Schulte to Columbus Crew, SLU Scott Gallagher, Simon Betcher to Vancouver, a SLU guy, Jack Lynn to Orlando City, Scott Gallagher and Notre Dame, Chandler Vaughn to LA Galaxy, SLU, Chase Neese to FC Dallas, SLU, right? Any of those last two, were either of them Scott Gallagher guys?
I know Nice was
Okay.
Vaughn. I think Vaughn might have been too.
Well, since you're talking, Stuart, why don't you kind of lead off on some of your thoughts on these guys?
Well, first of all, it's a big ouch for Kevin Kalish. I mean, he lost 6 guys, plus he's losing Marana to Houston, I believe, is signing a homegrown contract. And then AJ Palazzolo is signed to a team that is undisclosed in Stu Durando's article. So we'll see where he lands. Yeah, he's losing 8 guys. That's a lot to replace. But I'm sure, success begats success, and he'll be excited on that. But Kip Keller was slated to be number 1 overall on a bunch of those mock drafts, and he fell to 5th. But it sounds like Austin's a good place for him to land. He's already, I think this was day 2 of their training camp, and he just upgraded his Twitter, so he's at Kip Keller 44 now. So he did that today.
Ooh.
I mean, Isaiah is dynamite. I think he'll do really well, but sometimes attacking players are kind of hit or miss on the MLS draft. So we'll see how he does in Houston, and then I'm pretty sure that FC Dallas traded out of their spot in 13th because Crew took Schulte at 12, because I think Dallas really wanted Schulte. But that one's going to be really weird because Crew have 3 good goalies ahead of Schulte. So where does
that's the one I didn't like as much.
I mean, Brady Scott's. Schulte has already played well at and he's trained for 2 years at the USL Championship level, which should be a higher level than MLS Next Pro. So I really hate the idea if Patrick warms the bench for a year at MLS Next Pro and Brady's the starter there. So do they loan Schulte out? I don't know.
Or do they loan Brady to
Do they loan Brady
championship?
out? Yeah.
He's ready.
So I think Crew will be an interesting one to see if they utilize a loan to like a USL Championship team or USL 1 team or something like that, because they have 4 good goalkeepers who all need playing time.
I mean, that'll be interesting in and of itself to see how many of these Generation Adidas guys get loaned out, or just these first round picks get loaned out to anything other than an MLS Next Pro side. if available. It's like some clubs don't have them. Some still have their team in USL Championship. But will anybody try to like Phil? Your comment the other day was about the competition level and just not knowing MLS Next Pro versus that established USL Championship at the higher level. Is there are there any teams that are going to opt to send like the Jack Mayer route and send them to USL Championship as opposed to their own system with MLS Next Pro?
Which Jack's USL record with Charlotte's going to be one of those great trivia things.
Bro, yeah.
Played one game with Charlotte Independence, and he had an own goal. It's just like, oh.
And a
That's
red
crazy.
card, right? Did he get a red card? No.
Maybe? Did he get
No,
sent
I'm probably
off?
wrong. I think I'm wrong.
But, I mean, obviously so much quality there and not a great guy. It's just like, oof, that was a rough one and only game for the Independents.
Bounced right back though. Doing great.
Oh yeah, I mean, he was starting for Nashville by the end of that year, so I mean, it obviously didn't hurt him.
No, and I mean other than MLS is back, that was his first season, right? And that's what, like, once I started thinking about, like, Aiden Stanley getting a decent amount of starts last year and what Mayer's been able to do in a short amount of time, like, some of these SLU players could play this year. By the end of the year, they could cement a role depending on, injuries or how well they do. Like, that's crazy to me to think about. It's cool. It's awesome. I'll be watching them on FOTMob every single game, right? Seeing if they get some minutes. Any other thoughts on these guys? Any favorites? Glad they landed where they did.
I mean, Jack Lynn's I think he's a little underrated. He's absolutely fantastic and fun to watch. I think he could be a sleeper guy. In Orlando City, they know how to develop and put strikers in a position to succeed, especially college guys who they draft. So I think Jack Lynn's a good one to watch and see what he does. Obviously I expect them all to succeed, but we'll see. But very impressive overall by St. Louis in general, by 6 guys getting drafted from the area.
Pretty incredible.
Santiago, any thoughts from you on that?
Yeah, it was so exciting to get so many St. Louis players drafted. I don't know, like, to me it feels like it's amazing, and I was like, wow, St. Louis is like, SLU did great in the NCAA championship. They won their conference, and their only loss was at the championship. And I was like, so St. Louis is doing great things at the college level, now showing things at the professional level, and St. Louis is rising. Is back to being that soccer capital. And I think I was going to make a comment that one thing that probably was a relief for a lot of people was that none of the players got drafted by Cincinnati, and we're not going to find ourselves following Cincinnati a little bit just to follow the St. Louis player.
Thank God.
When Kip went later, I was like, hey, I'll take it.
That was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, the draft too. As a St. Louisan, to be invested so late into the draft, from the beginning to the end of that draft day, like, we could have had players the entire time. It's just surreal. It feels so surreal that this is the way it is for us with SLU. And I know you were mentioning, Stuart, that Kalish is going to have a hard go of it now that he lost 8 players, and I agree. But he's built from scratch already, and look where he got. And I do think success breeds success, that hopefully they'll be getting some better recruits, and the pipeline is real between Scott Gallagher and hopefully City in the future, and SLU. And, SLU is going to be such a fun one to watch going forward. Maybe they can break the record with the first round and get up ahead of Akron and Wake Forest for the other 2 most draft picks in the first round. I'd like to see that. That's another goal for the future, perhaps. Jake, any last thoughts about St. Louis City this last week or 2 and even the weeks before that? I mean, Carnell's been hired, all these other hires. MLS Next Pro is growing. We're getting closer and closer to the season. What are your thoughts, man?
I'll tie in the draft too a little bit, just as a like general broad look at it. Well, first I got to say I'm not an official St. Louisan because I have not had my head in Fredbird's mouth beak yet. So
This is real.
dang it, so missing out there. But I think
Hold on.
looking at what.
Hold on. Raise your hand if you've had your head in Fredbird's mouth, because I have. It's a thing. It's
Oh,
real.
wow.
Work on it, Sandy. You too, Jake.
Okay.
All right, keep going, Jake. What were you gonna say?
I think, I mean, I've talked a lot about just the build up and all the exciting stuff that's happening, building up to St. Louis City, and how I'll tell my Lyft driver about the academy, and then we have our reserves team or whatever I was calling it at the time, and then it's all just building up. It's such a good build up, and I think even we talked about it how when SLU was making their run in the tournament, how that's just adding on top of it, adding to the excitement, and then like you add in all the draft picks and everything too, just adds to this perfect storm that is blowing up as St. Louis soccer builds to MLS, which is super exciting. Shortly before the draft, I was talking to a coworker who we were talking about soccer. He knew I was a soccer guy, so he asked me about, I think he said the story was like, oh yeah, my brother-in-law is really into soccer, and he's telling me how St. Louis is such a soccer capital, and he's not a guy from St. Louis, so he was just like asking me like how true it was, and I was like, well, the draft is coming up, and we have a chance to have like multiple guys go in the top 10. So that just tells you right there, if you want to look at it just like one quick look, that says a lot. And I think that's something that translates well to a general audience, and it will just help them keep an eye out for, what's to come with MLS. So it like I said, it just adds to the perfect storm that's building.
Completely agree. That's a perfect closure for tonight. Omicron's real right now, so this live stream's been going and everyone seems to like it. Thank you so much if you joined us online and you're chatting on Twitter.
We'll figure out the chat thing at some point.
Well, I know we'll talk about this. I talked to tech support today to try to get it to work, and it doesn't exist. So we're over here like, look, I got the chat on my phone. Like, I'm doing what you guys are doing. So if you do, it works though. It works just fine. So it was really cool of you guys kind of to add to the conversation tonight. Thank you, all you guys. We got the whole crew of 5 guys here tonight. Thank you for joining me. And if you're listening on the podcast or listening live streaming, thank you for that. We'll be chatting to you guys either next week or the week after at the latest. We've been consistent and we're going to stick with it. Talk to you guys later.